The responsibility of parents towards the character building of their children is among the most sacred duties entrusted to human beings by God. For through this responsibility, the moral strength and survival of entire civilizations depend. When parents give birth to a child, they do not merely bring another life into existence. They assume the lifelong duty of nurturing a soul that will one day shape society itself. From the earliest moments of a child's life, the home becomes the first school, and the parents the first teachers. It is within those four walls that the foundations of truth, integrity, and compassion are laid. Parents are responsible not only for feeding and clothing their children, but also for monitoring the habits, attitudes, and influences that form their character. They must be observant of the company their children keep, the kind of environment they are exposed to, the thoughts they develop, and the moral shell in which they live. For every friendship, every conversation, every form of entertainment leaves a mark upon the heart, and these subtle impressions, when left unguarded, grow into the values that define the person they become. Yet, even in families where parents sincerely care, one may ask, why do some children, especially sons, still fall into bad habits such as immorality, addiction, or even sexual misconduct? The truth lies in understanding that parental responsibility is not a momentary act. It is a continuous moral presence that must accompany a child through every stage of growth. Many parents watch their children's outer behavior but fail to reach the deeper level of their inner emotions and moral consciousness. They provide comfort but not conscience, luxury but not limits, affection but not accountability. When love is not balanced with discipline and spiritual guidance, the child grows up emotionally secure but morally weak, unable to resist temptation. Likewise, when discipline is too harsh and love is absent, the heart rebels in secret, seeking satisfaction in destructive ways. Thus, true parenting requires a harmony between affection and authority, the wisdom to be both gentle and firm, loving and guiding. A child's character is the reflection of the home. If parents argue with bitterness, deceive, or gossip, the child unconsciously absorbs those patterns. If they show kindness, speak truth, and honor faith, those virtues take root in the child's soul. A son who grows up watching his father treat his mother with respect learns dignity toward women. A daughter who sees her mother pray learns humility and peace. Character building cannot be achieved by lectures alone. It is demonstrated through daily example. A father's words must align with his actions. A mother's care must reflect her spiritual wisdom. It is not enough to send a child to school or mosque and assume that teachers or scholars will do the rest. The moral education of a child begins with the conduct of the parents, for children believe more in what they see than in what they hear. Moreover, in the age of digital exposure, where the internet and social media shape young minds more than ever, parents must remain vigilant and informed. They must know not only their children's friends in the physical world, but also their companions in the virtual one, the content they consume, the people they follow, and the influences they admire. This vigilance must not be rooted in mistrust, but in protective love. A wise parent will create an atmosphere where a child feels safe to share thoughts and mistakes, rather than hide them in guilt or fear. Open communication guided by empathy can save a young soul from moral collapse. Parents must also teach their children to value modesty, respect, and responsibility toward others. These lessons, when planted early, protect them from the poisons of lust and the pressures of peer culture that often lead to moral decline. However, it is equally essential to understand that spiritual training is the cornerstone of all character building. A child who grows up with a sense of accountability to God develops an inner compass that no amount of surveillance can replace. Parents should awaken in their children the consciousness that God watches over every action and intention. This awareness becomes the strongest defense against moral corruption. When a young person learns to fear God with love, not terror, he begins to govern himself even when no one is watching. This is the true success of parenting, to raise a soul that remains upright without supervision. As the Quran says, "O you who believe, save yourselves and your families from a fire whose fuel is men and stones." Surah At-Tahrim 66:6, emphasizing that moral preservation begins at home, under the guidance of conscious parents. To raise children who respect life, truth, and purity, Parents must themselves become beacons of moral light. They must pray for their children, guide them with patience, and forgive their mistakes while correcting them firmly. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Every one of you is a shepherd, and every one of you will be asked about his flock." This means parents will be answerable before God not for how successful or wealthy their children became, but for how righteous and compassionate they were raised to be. Society today suffers not from a shortage of education or technology, but from a shortage of conscience, a crisis that begins in homes where moral teaching has been replaced by material ambition. The revival of human decency, therefore, depends on parents who understand that their most sacred duty is not to raise achievers, but to raise good human beings. In conclusion, the responsibility of parents toward character building is not a burden, but a divine honor. It is through their guidance that a child learns what it means to be human, to love, to forgive, to stand for truth, and to fear wrongdoing. If parents fulfill this sacred trust with sincerity and consistency, they not only shape good children but also build the foundation of a noble and progressive society. But if they neglect it, the decay of morality spreads from the home to the nation. Therefore, every parent must look inward and ask, what kind of world will I leave behind through the children I raise? For the answer to that question determines the fate of humanity itself. Please subscribe and press the bell icon to receive notifications of future videos when uploaded.